My name is Monique Miles, and I work at the Aspen Institute, the Forum for Community Solutions. I want to kick us off today by saying welcome to our webinar. Today's topic is focused on summer youth employment. This welcome I am extending is on behalf of the Center for Law and Social Policy, also known as CLASP, JPMorgan Chase, and the Aspen Forum for Community Solutions, the Opportunity Youth Forum. We have worked across our three organizations and in partnership with all of today's speakers to curate the content that will be presented today. Thank you to Keisha Bird at CLASP, to Edgar and Linda at JPMorgan Chase, and to my colleagues at the Aspen Institute, including Mike and Yelena, for your leadership, partnership, and support. We will poll participants in a moment, but before doing so, it's worth noting the three networks that are presented on this webinar today, including the CCRY network, which stands for Communities Collaborating to Reconnect Youth. This network, convened by CLASP, includes 18 communities from across the country that are working across systems to reconnect young adults to education and employment. Another network on this call includes JPMorgan Chase's Markets of Priority, including many funders and community grantee partners from this network that have joined the call today. We also have participants from the Aspen Opportunity Youth Forum Network. This network, which I lead, supports 33 rural, urban, and tribal communities around the country to reconnect young adults to education and careers. Thank you again to all of our partners from around the country. We all know that summer jobs matter. Research demonstrates again and again that summer youth employment programs are associated with positive employment experiences, improved educational outcomes, and increased skill development. At the same time, young people share that income earned from summer youth employment opportunities provides helpful income and the connection to supportive adults, peers, and the community. Taken all together, these experiences create a valuable and meaningful opportunity for young adults in communities across the country. And as everyone on this webinar today knows, these experiences matter, and they are too critical to the development of our country's young adults to forego, even in the face of COVID-19. Given this urgency, the purpose of today's event is to create a space for cities, including community-based organizations from communities all around the country, to bring summer youth employment programs to fruition. Today's webinar is aimed at exchanging ideas that will offer value to the field. Today's webinar is designed to offer specific and tangible examples of the strategies, the tactics, the tools, the resources, and the solutions to many of the challenges communities are facing in their efforts to implement summer programming, including the integration of youth voice and designing both meaningful and rewarding work experiences. To ensure the content of today's webinar is both timely and relevant, we surveyed our networks. We learned that technology access among youth and technology capacity among providers is a priority topic. We also heard that other challenges programs are facing in their efforts to implement summer employment opportunities includes effective employer engagement, ensuring high quality in virtual programming, and also ensuring youth safety for in-person work experiences. Based on this feedback, we asked our presenters to address these topics along with other key themes while sharing both their adaptations and innovations related to summer youth employment. At the national level, we can't think of a more important topic for today's discussion. In addition to the relevancy of summer youth employment and skill attainment and economic support for young adults, we also know that how communities are coming together in the face of COVID-19 to continue to provide critical programming to the most vulnerable young adults is an important story to document. The stories today are about removing barriers and overcoming challenges, and at the same time, these are also stories of community resiliency, including how communities are both deepening their infrastructure and expanding their capacity to meet the needs of young adults. We want to document this critical work so that we can continue to support communities to deepen their resiliency, not only for the near term, but also for the long term, should any future challenges face our communities. So with this commitment in mind, I'd like to ask that everyone joining today introduce yourselves using the chat feature. Please share your name, share your organization, and also please share the community that you're from. If you have questions or comments for the speakers, go ahead and use that chat function. We encourage you to do so and to keep them coming, because we know that the content presented today from our speakers will be robust for sure, but we also know that the part we're so excited to get to is the dialogue related to your questions today. So feel free to go ahead and enter them into the chat. Now, I'm going to turn this over to Edgar from JPMorgan Chase, but before doing so, let me share the agenda and quickly introduce today's speakers. In regard to the agenda, after brief remarks from Edgar, our partner Keisha from CLASP will lead a quick poll, and then we'll hear from the panelists. After we've heard from the panelists, we will open up the dialogue for some Q&A, and we'll close with a call to action. Today's speakers include Farah Farnes, the Senior Director of External Relations at the Philadelphia Youth Network, Shauna Haywood, Vice President of Programs from Detroit Connect, Joe McLaughlin, Director of Research and Strategy from the Boston Private Industry Council, and Lukey Forbes from the City of Albany. We also have our partner from Los Angeles, Lori Collier, the Director of the Los Angeles Opportunity Youth Collaborative and the Alliance for Children's Rights. Thank you all for your time today. Now let's go ahead and dive in. Edgar, I turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Monique. First off, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to work with the Aspen and CLASP team and seeing how diligently and passionately they work on behalf of youth all over the country. We at JPMorgan would like to give again a huge thank you to both teams for organizing this webinar and convening such a diverse group of individuals. Some of you may know JPMorgan Chase supports some youth employment programs in 20+ US cities, and we are proud to be in a community with all of you and create and continue to sustain summer opportunities for young people all over the country. Again, just a huge thank you to this team. And with that, I'll hand it over to Keisha.
Thank you, Edgar, and thank you, Monique, for the introduction and the framing. It's been a pleasure to work with the Aspen team and JPMorgan Chase and Mike and Elena. And thank you all of you for joining us. We know this is a very important conversation that we are having for and with our young people around the country. So we wanted to make this as interactive as possible. So we're going to do a couple of polls to see how everyone is doing and feeling and get some of your perspectives. So how you can join Poll Everywhere is you can go to the web and you go to pollev.com and you enter Youth Team 426 and you respond to the activity. And then I believe Mike can also put this in the chat function so that you can join. So we'll go right to the poll so everybody can get joining. Okay, so we know we had over 350 or so people registered and counting. So we're really happy to provide everyone with this opportunity, learning exchange. So, you know, tell us where you're calling from. And you, again, use in the chat function, you can see where you can use Poll Everywhere to do that. So again, you go to pollev.com and then you'll be able to do Youth Team, I believe it is Youth Team 426, and then you can use a dot to put where you are joining us from around the country. So let's see.
So Keisha, folks are coming in from all across the country. It's updating on the one screen, but not in the PowerPoint. But we have folks here from Maine to California and Hawaii. Folks from all across the country. Wonderful diversity.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So fortunately, we won't be able to see that for everyone, but we know that folks are calling from all around the country. And so we know that this is an important issue, not just in urban areas, but rural areas and tribal communities as well. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so we know that we are have a number of different networks represented, and some folks are part of multiple networks. But again, using going to pollev.com and with Youth Team 426, tell us what network you're a part of. CCRY, Opportunity Youth Forum, or the JPMorgan Chase Grantee Network. And Mike, if it's not uploading,
Yep.
you can share with us.
Yeah, so not sure what's going on there, but we've got 33% of communities around from the Opportunity Youth Forum, 8% from the CCRY, Communities Collaborating to Reconnect Youth Network, 15% are JPMorgan Chase grantees, and 44% are others. So thanks, everyone.
Excellent, excellent. So again, we know there's multiple networks and multiple in communities as well as national networks. So we really appreciate everyone for joining us. All right, well, let's go to our next one. As Monique mentioned, we did a survey of some of our networks to really shape this conversation and hear what was happening on the ground. And so we want to know, how is your community approaching your summer youth employment programs this year? And again, in the chat box, you have the link to where you can go directly to the poll.
So here we've got around a quarter of communities and respondents say it's on. System leaders have publicly committed between around 25-27%. 10% or less of you have said that it's off. Your systems leaders have publicly canceled the program. Also, around 27% are unsure. We hope the programs will occur, but it's uncertain. And then we've got about a split between components occurring in person of around 19% and 21% occurring offline.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. And thanks for everyone for participating. I believe next we will get started with Farah, who is at the Philadelphia Youth Network, and she'll share a lot more about their work and how they're approaching summer youth employment. Continue to use the chat function throughout the panelist presentations. We're going to facilitate a Q&A period afterwards. So thank you. And Farah, I'm turning it over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you for including me as part of this great conversation. Oh, wow, the color is interesting. So what I will say, I'm really here to talk about Work Ready 2020. And Work Ready is the largest coordinated summer youth employment program in the city of Philadelphia. We serve approximately 8,000 young people every year in summer employment programs. And we do that through a network of nearly 80 different providers. And so, Mike, you can go ahead and change into the next slide. And so, we really are looking at, what I'm going to quickly talk about is the concept of pivoting a system. For us, it was, not even just about thinking about an individual program, but what does it take to actually pivot an entire system that's coordinated amongst multiple funders, direct service program operators, system stakeholders, as well as the youth and young people and employers that are connected to the program. And so for us, we had to be pretty quick. I think we looked at the first initial stay-at-home orders that were in the Philadelphia area that were 2 weeks, and felt that we could recover pretty quickly from a 2-week lag. But the second that it got extended past that 2 weeks, we saw the writing on the wall that this wasn't going to be a quick recovery, and very quickly put into place, hey, we're going to pivot. If we stop now, we're going to totally miss our window to be able to change. And so for us, it was really just embracing that adaptive thinking that was so critical for us to be able to move forward and get to an announcement from our mayor on May 5th. And so we pretty much did that all within 6 weeks of completely taking down a program and building back up. And really the way that we did that was through the coordination of partners. And that's the key role that PYN often plays within the larger system. And so we're bringing together those service delivery partners who we pretty quickly sent surveys out to. Are you still operating? Are you still open? Have your staff moved to virtual and digital settings? Are you talking to your young people? If so, how? Just to get some information and data collection. We had to reach out to our funders. The value of the Work Ready Summer System is that it is a blended funding model. So we have upwards of, nearly half a dozen different funding streams that are all going into support summer employment. And so we had to reach out to all of our funders and really get them aligned on some of the ideas and negotiate, right? What were their priorities? What were our priorities? What were other funders' priorities? And how can we align those thinkings? We also reached out to employers pretty quickly, those that are both financially supporting our programming, but also that were operating as worksite hosts. And, for the most part, pretty collectively, a lot of our employers were not able to commit to any type of in-person experiences. And certainly were sharing with us that commitment would not occur anytime soon. And that really helped us make some swift decisions. As much as we'd love for in-person experiences, if you don't have physical places for young people to go, we recognized that we had to make those kind of decisions about how we're shifting to digital and online experiences, because we wouldn't have physical workplaces, even if stay-at-home orders were lifted. Also looking at system partners, what outside of the direct funders, who were the people that cared about summer employment and what were their goals. And then finally, the young people, what was going to be the best and most safe type of experience for those young people as we moved through. And so that really, I think, got us to, we knew we were going to have programmatic shifts. We knew that that was the reality, that we could not move forward with simply hoping that we would have the same type of summer experience. And so we looked at what would it look like for an entire summer system to move to digital experiences. What are the technology platforms that would be used? What were the considerations? And I'll go into that in a little bit about what actually ended up happening. And then, how are we making sure, because we are a large scale system, we knew that we needed to have a coordinated plan that allowed for flexibility. With over 80 different individual organizations running programs, we knew that our system had to be adaptable and customized, right? It couldn't be a one size fits all because we have so many different types of unique providers and unique young people. And so Mike, if you want to go ahead and move to the next slide, what we really looked at is the fact that, we were able to make the announcement that Work Ready is still in, that has been our catchphrase. And you can go to the next one, Mike, because it really will describe a little bit about what it looks like. And so for us, it was really important to call out that young people in our Work Ready system can apply, which the application was always accessible online, but really calling out that you can get connected. A big key for our shift was actually the enrollment piece. And so that piece around turning in the necessary required paperwork was a critical component that we needed to identify and understand and navigate. And then how are we participating? And for us, it was also all on the device of their choice, meaning the device of a participant's choice. It was very important for us to ensure that everything could be done minimally on a mobile device. We had data from our online application previously that, well over 50%, closer to 75% of all participants in the Work Ready program were filling out their online application on a mobile device, which made us feel confident to move forward to say, if we minimally ensure that the platforms that we are using are mobile accessible, our data shows that young people are using their mobile devices to get connected. And so we're moving them forward to use their mobile devices for the enrollment and participation. I'll talk quickly about how we are thinking about enrollment and what we are currently doing. Making sure personal identifiable information was extremely important, and making sure that that was secure was very important for us. And so as a large scale system, we already had a secure data transfer system called ShareFile. And that is the data system that we have kind of adapted to create essentially individual folders for participants to upload their documentation, whether that be pictures of photo IDs, submitting supportive documentation for income verification and so forth. All of that now is done via a link that a young person receives that they can submit the information securely, and then it can be reviewed by the necessary folks on our end to verify the accuracy and that a completed file has been done. We also utilized a platform called Adobe Sign, and so which is a way for us to send out kind of a packet of information more in a online form that then will convert it into that standard packet. And so between the Adobe Sign platform and the ShareFile platform, that is how we're managing enrollment. I saw the question come up about the age range. Our Work Ready Summer program spans from the ages of 12 to 24. So we have a pretty wide system, and that's why, again, we knew that our providers they know who their participants were, but we had to make decisions on what the entire system could bear and understand and obtain. And so that's really how we have shifted and moved forward from our enrollment perspective. And then in our participate perspective, and Mike, if you can move to the next slide, it gives a little bit of an understanding of what the actual experience looks like. Experiences can be developed and led by partner organizations, meaning that partner organization completely makes up their own program that is online, digital, and in some cases virtual, like what we're doing here, right? Virtual Zoom sessions where you're doing some teaching, some reading, and so forth. So we wanted to give providers the ability to develop out their own programs if they have the capacity to do so. We also, though, as the system backbone, developed out 3 specific tracks, and it looks like it's a little bit cut off on the screen here, but those specific tracks are digital career exposure, financial literacy, and digital literacy and brand identity, which is a lot of things like how to navigate different social media platforms, what you should think about in terms of your digital footprint, and in terms of what employers can find and search about you. And so those were really the 3 areas that our tracks that we are building out, meaning we are building out the activities, the tasks, the curriculums for those things that our providers can quote unquote take off the shelf and implement on their own. And then finally, offering providers to do a hybrid of both. If you want to take portions of our curriculum that we're developing out and have your own unique additions that you want to add in, that's also an option. And so what we're saying is that young people will have digital experiences in one of these 3 tracks, but not every experience will be the same. It will be dependent on the provider that is offering those experiences. And our direct service providers are really the ones that are leading those activities and opportunities for young people. We chose, when we are developing out our tracks, to use a platform called Naviance, which is traditionally more connected with high schools and post-secondary planning, but they have a lot of tools and curriculum that are aligned with the tracks that we wanted to focus on. And they have a lot of flexibility with taking and uploading data. So it will be a very seamless process for our young people to get connected after they have filled out an online application. Our providers, on the other hand, are using platforms any range from Virtual Job Shadow, LRNG, Zoom, Microsoft Teams. There's a few other platforms. And so if the providers are choosing to do their own, they're using the platforms that they have access to. And again, the platform PYN has chosen to use is called Naviance. And so it is, again, it's more traditionally used in kind of school districts and post-secondary, but that is what we have chosen to use and utilize it for our summer employment programming. And if, Mike, you want to move to that last slide, I can talk a little bit about, at this point, we are still monitoring local stay-at-home orders and safety guidelines to allow for in-person experiences. Locally here, Philadelphia it's just been announced that we will move into what's called a yellow phase, which will allow some businesses to open, but not all. And so obviously one critical component is you can't have an in-person experience if there's actually not a way for that worksite to be open. But what we are seeing is that within the yellow phase, summer camps and daycares have been allowed to open. And so the Philadelphia's summer camp program is planning on operating their program as it was planned. And so they are planning to start in-person experiences July 6th. Some of what we are considering and requiring is an addendum to our traditional worksite agreement that will outline a checklist of safety requirements given COVID regulations. So things like ensuring face masks, ensuring gloves, ensuring hand washing stations. Worksites are going to have to submit their COVID response plan of how they're reopening for our review. And so those are all of the things that will be required in the event that local stay-at-home orders will allow for worksites to occur. We are anticipating some, but the large majority of our programs are fully moving forward with that digital anticipation, and with that small group, maybe about 10% of the system that is looking at doing some in-person experiences. I saw some of the chats come through. So quickly, and I know we have a Q&A at the end, quickly, PYN actually developed the curriculum on our own, and we have an internal team that does a lot of professional development and curriculum development. So we had those capacities and resources to do that. And then also, I think that there was a note about the fee. There is a fee for Naviance. And young people, and that is a fee that PYN is covering on behalf of the system. That is, again, another positioning that we can do. And so we are paying that fee and giving access to the system. And so the last one that I will just note is that for digital experiences, they are incentive-based. That was a very big shift for our system. Our system was previously wage-bearing, and the shift to digital is now aligned with activity and milestone completion that are tied to very specific incentives. And so our entire network now has incentive plan guidelines that will outline the number of kind of the length of activities and how that can be matched to a monetary assessment. But it is by no way hourly wages. That was a big, big shift for us. The in-person experiences may still be hourly, but the shift to digital is now fully incentive-based. And then I know that there's other questions and other presenters. And so I'll leave those questions for later and turn it over to Shauna Hayward from Connect Detroit. Shauna, you might still be muted. There you go.
Thank you, Farah. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shauna Hayward from Connect Detroit, and I'm honored to be able to represent all of the great work that's happening in Detroit around summer youth employment for 2020. So we started with each summer we have a theme that we kind of embrace for the summer and run with our partners. And our theme, if you could go back one slide, Mike, our theme for 2020, we came up with in January was Ready, Set, Grow, kind of a nod to our program's name, which is Grow Detroit's Young Talent. And so what I can tell you is that between January, when we came up with this theme, and March, it took on an entirely new meaning for us and Detroit and our partners. So I've titled this kind of Grow Detroit's Young Talent Virtual Summer Shift. And by shift, I mean the reinvention of our entire program for the summer of 2020. So if you can go to the next slide. Connect Detroit is one of the implementation partners for the summer youth employment in the city of Detroit. We work in partnership with the mayor's office in the city and our workforce development entity in Detroit, which is Detroit Employment Solutions Corporation. And so our citywide goal for summer youth employment is to reach 8,000 young people between the ages of 14 and 24. Connect Detroit is responsible for serving 5,000 of those young people through our network of about 70 or so partners. And so partnership and collaboration is definitely one of the keys to how we approach everything, really. What I learned early on was there were two key factors that really supported us in being able to be successful in how we thought about this and approached this. One was when everything just started to go bonkers, was to really step back and ground ourselves in our core values and goals. Who are we and what are we really about accomplishing? And being committed to not straying away from that, even in light of a global pandemic crisis. The other thing that I found to be a really critical factor was an early decision to go virtual, just put a stake in the ground and saying, this is how we're going to approach summer 2020. So, you know, there's two types of decisions. There's like the unofficial decision when things happen, and then there's the official decision. So unofficially, we pretty much knew we were going to need to shift to a virtual experience about mid-April. And then we made the official decision and announcement in early May for the city of Detroit. So next slide, please, Mike. So in thinking about our core goals, our core values that drive our work and our thinking, the first one is youth and families as the center and heart of this work, and keeping that in mind. The second is a strong commitment to quality and not straying from that. The third is a commitment to positive youth development as a fundamental way of approaching this work. We are, you know, a two-sided coin. We are about employment and workforce readiness, but with the population we're serving, we're all about positive youth development principles and building those into the work. The other core value that we operate from is just relationships and the importance of that. And then, of course, teamwork, partnership, and collaboration is just how we necessarily have to approach this work with the lift that we're talking about. And then lastly, this summer in particular, safety had been lifted up as a major value and a major driver in the decisions that we had to make moving forward. So when we thought big picture wise, again, when everything started to go bonkers, what is it that we need to solve for in how we move forward with our summer experience in Detroit for 2020? And I thought about it in two ways. There are all of the administrative and logistical realities that we're going to have to deal with and figure out, but we're going to need to do that with a strong commitment to quality and meaningful experiences for our young people. And as we approach everything and all of the hundreds of decisions that needed to happen as we moved forward, keeping those two lenses in mind were extremely helpful. And so as we built out what the summer 2020 experience was going to look like, we did make the decision for the 5,000 young people that we'll be serving through Connect Detroit to go 100% virtual with that experience. And so that meant a lot of things to us. We had to figure out how to transition from what has traditionally been a paper registration enrollment process to being able to do that electronically. Then we had to figure out what are the core content of this experience that young people are going to get. And so that was three components. The learning experience, and for us, we selected the virtual job shadow platform, which I'll talk a little more about. And then it was important to me to marry that with a companion human side, is what I call it. And so we have been building out, and with a partner, a curriculum that's grounded in social and emotional learning that our partners will also implement in conjunction with the online platform. And then the third major piece are the supports that have to be built into this. And then the last component was a shift in our thinking from a wage-based additional wage to a stipend-based system based on this virtual learning experience. And so I'll just spend a moment on those components. Okay, not needed. Okay.
Shauna, your sound went crazy for a minute, so I just muted you and took you back off. So keep going.
Apologies. So you can go to the next slide, Mike. And I'll just talk for a moment about each of these components and how we thought about it. So for our enrollment system, the first step for young people to get into the Grow Detroit's Young Talent Program is our online application. And so that launched in January and was already underway. So young people, that's how they connect with the GDYT program. From there, they get selected as a participant in the program through various ways, some through lottery, some through partners. And after they're selected, they have to actually enroll. So how do we shift from a paper registration process of onboarding 5,000 young people to a way that's safe and electronic? And so we had to build, really in a matter of weeks, this electronic enrollment system. The three core pieces to it are the communications, keeping everyone up to speed on what they need to do, what's happening, how it works, obviously through email, text messaging, phones, all of the traditional methods. The other component to it are the forms and the signatures that we have to get for everyone. And so we used a system called JotForm. Then the third component is, what do we do with all of this information and data? And how do we keep it secure as well as accessible to our team so that we can do all of the things that we need to do with it? And so the JotForm platform integrates with Google Drive very nicely. And so we've been able to use that. Now, it's not perfect, it's not ideal. We, like I said, had to build this and roll it out in a matter of weeks. We didn't get to pilot it. We didn't get to do really rigorous, robust testing of it. We pretty much just had to build it and roll with it. And that's a scary, scary thing. But we're making it work for us. And so far, no major snafus. The other component is the learning experience. And so the cornerstone of our learning experience is the virtual job shadow platform. This just tells you a little bit about it. There's assessments built in, there's some deep dive career exploration. It incorporates work readiness activities, financial education, life skills. We're also gonna build in a capstone project that young people will kind of culminate their experience with. And we were really pleased with the level of technical support that comes with this platform. The other component that I spoke about was the social emotional learning curriculum. So we're working locally with our Youth Development Resource Center, and they're developing this curriculum for us as a companion. So our 70 partners that we work with are going to facilitate the young people's experience this summer, guide them through the virtual job shadow experience, as well as deliver this companion curriculum. And that's where they'll have opportunities to connect with a caring adult, still virtual, but connect with their peers, have an opportunity to reflect on their experiences with the virtual job shadow and everything else that's going on in their lives, and also have a chance for some social emotional learning skill building through this curriculum. Built into this is our supports for our partners to be able to deliver it, the trainings, TA, and weekly check-ins around the curriculum. The other core component are the overall supports that we know our young people are gonna need. We know technology is gonna be an issue, so how do we solve for that? We know in light of this pandemic, and Detroit is a hotspot, so staff, partners, young people, families are dealing with a lot of loss. So how do we support them with that trauma and grief? And how do we ramp up our partners to be able to do that effectively? We also know people are being hit hard with some basic needs. There's a lot of food insecurities. There's a lot of jobs that have been jeopardized as a result of this. And so we know we can't solve for everything, but we also know that this is going to impact the young people that we're serving. And we have to be thinking about how we can support them in these areas. And then, of course, self-care for our partners, for our young people, and for ourselves as we move into this work that we're all embroiled in. The other major shift that we had to build in was a shift from a wage-based system where we traditionally put young people out at work sites for work experiences and project-based learning experiences. And so we shifted from the wages that we traditionally offer to a stipend-based system that is built around benchmarks and achievement of those benchmarks. And to keep it clean and simple, we adjusted our summer approach, which is traditionally a 6-week experience. We have compacted it into a 5-week experience. There'll be 2 major benchmarks per week that young people will have to achieve. And if they achieve them, they'll be able to earn $100 per benchmark. And so each young person can earn up to a $1,000 stipend for the summer. Other things that we are thinking about with our partners that just have to be on the radar as we move through this. What are some of the principles and best practices that we need to employ as we shift to this remote distance learning approach? This is not new. It's been happening forever, but it's new to us. And so there's a lot out there that we can learn from to ensure our participants have the most quality experience. We know that our young people have the end of their school year was online, and now we're telling them their summer work experience is going to be online and virtual. So how do we keep them engaged? That's another thing we're thinking about. How do we support our special needs populations and kids with varying abilities is another thing we're thinking about. And then as we someday will move from our shelter in place mode back into the workspace, how do we do that safely for our team and our staff and our partners? So those are some other things that we're thinking about and trying to solve for. And I'm sure that all of you are thinking about as well. And then, I summed all of this up in, 5 or 6 slides, but I'm gonna be honest, it has been a heavy, exhausting, but also fulfilling lift. And so as we move forward, we know that we're just gonna have to continue to operate and innovate through all of the uncertainty that comes with this current situation that we find ourselves in. And so that's where we are. We're going to continue to move forward and to grow. Thank you. So I'm going to turn it over now to Joe.
Hi, Shona. Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for inviting us to participate in this exciting forum. So I don't think we have an official theme yet for the city of Boston, but my boss who may be on, Neil Sullivan, has kind of coined this the summer like no other. And I think that's kind of true for all of us this year as we move a lot of these experiences to remote. So what I thought I would do is just kind of start out with a brief overview of the city of Boston's program overall, and then describe how my organization, the Boston Private Industry Council, kind of fits into that. So overall, our citywide campaign, we offer paid jobs and internships with private sector employers and also with community-based organizations and nonprofits. Many of those jobs are subsidized with public funding and also with private philanthropy as well. So the PICS component and the Private Industry Council, the PIC, is the city's workforce board, and we're also a school to career partner in Boston Public Schools. So we have staff that cover the 31 major high schools in Boston and prepare those students for school year and summer internships over the summer. And in our role, we organize a private sector component of the overall mayor's campaign. And then down below, I just listed some of the other major key partners, the intermediaries with the PIC in the summer program. And they include the city's Department of Youth Employment and Engagement, which typically will place 3,200 to 3,500 youth in jobs throughout the city that are subsidized. John Hancock is a private sector employer that works with the PIC that typically has students in-house, but then they also sponsor over 600 placements as part of a MLK Scholar program at CBOs throughout the city. And then Action for Boston Community Development provides another 800 or so jobs, and then Youth Options Unlimited, which is kind of targets court-involved youth and supports them to a job transitional employment program. So altogether, we aim for in our best years to kind of hit 10,000 work experiences throughout the summer collectively. And those experiences primarily are wage-based, because I know there's a lot of questions on that in the chat. In a typical summer, 25 to 30 hours per week, they pay minimum wage, which in Massachusetts is now $12.75 an hour. And many of those are going to be that same way this summer as well, although we do have some stipended programs as well. So what we've done in the past couple months now is the city has really led a planning process with all those intermediaries and partners that I showed on the last slide to kind of just think about how we can still have a very successful program this summer. And the mayor's really kind of led the charge with saying he wants as many opportunities for students to engage in constructive work and learning programming as possible. So he's really kind of set a high goal for us to achieve, but he's supported us with city staff and additional resources to make this work. So one of the first things we did, similar to I think what Philadelphia says, we surveyed CBOs and employers in April to learn about their hiring plans under different scenarios, so we could understand, okay, if on-site work would not be possible in July, can sites offer remote programming, and then what resources would they need? And certainly one of the key themes that came up in that was technology, both technology in terms of understanding how to do Zoom and Google Classroom and those platforms to support the experience, but also to make sure that students and the youth that they're serving would have Chromebooks or other laptops and tools so that they could connect and do work remotely. So one of the things we worked on with Boston Public Schools is to ensure that students can keep their Chromebooks over the summer so that they could use them for these experiences. And then this group has really been leading the development of virtual models and then also identifying new potential jobs to offset cutbacks in our private sector hiring and what we expect to be some reductions at least in camp counselor and daycare jobs, which are a large share of all the overall city jobs. And then we've been planning opportunities for specific youth groups, so younger youth, and then also finding jobs that potentially older youth can do. And the assumption is that a lot of this is moving to remote, but we do hope that some of this could be, some of the work could be outdoors and on-site as well, delivering food, other things. I mean, every idea that we can think of, we'd say, can we turn this into a job and create an opportunity for students and youth? So that's kind of been the heart of this. And then, similar to other groups, we've been sharing ideas and best practices for remote onboarding and payroll procedures. So with the PIC on the private sector side, a lot of those students will go onto the payroll of the firm. So we're not doing the onboarding. The companies are actually onboarding them, and they're going onto their payroll. We do have a small set of about 500 to 600 subsidized jobs where we'll be going through the same process that we need to onboard students and get them onto our payroll as well. Next slide, Mike. So that's kind of the overview of our process. Oh, two more things I forgot. The planning effort continues. It evolves, daily, as similar to some of the other cities on the call. I mean, Boston has been pretty devastated by the Covid-19, and we're still only in phase 1. So there's still a lot of decisions to be made about what happens with summer camp in the city of Boston and daycares as well. Most of our office jobs are kind of gone to remote, but as new information comes and there's public health updates, the process keeps evolving. And lastly, we really hope to learn from this. So as part of the core planning team, Dr. Alicia Modestino has done research on summer jobs in Boston and across the country, has been kind of helping us design and evaluate these opportunities. And will help us learn from this summer. And one thing that we think is that, in some ways, this is accelerating the future of work discussion in Boston. And, we think that some of the project-based learning and also the online education training programs that we'll use this summer to supplement work experiences could become a core component of future summer jobs. Even when we do return to kind of more on-site work, these things will live on and could help supplement and really improve our overall work and learning programs going forward as well. Go to the next slide. Okay, so one of the key themes that I wanted to touch on was employer engagement, because that came out in the survey that Aspen and CLASP and others released a few weeks ago in terms of where sites felt that they could use some more guidance. So we've been collaborating with our employer partners to kind of design these experiences and offer assistance along the way where they need it. So I'll just tell you a little bit about what we've done since the spring, and then kind of some of the program structures that we're developing with them. Go to the next slide, Mike. So we have an employer network that we've convened over the last couple of years in Boston, and it represents the companies that we work with across an array of industries: finance, life sciences, higher ed, technology. legal firms as well. And the attendees of the forum are largely the people at these companies that are involved in developing the program, doing the recruiting, selecting students, and onboarding them, and then designing the actual program activity. So it creates a great learning network across our employer partners so that they could share best practices. I mean, we have several of our hospitals are our biggest partners. When a new person gets the assignment to take on the summer jobs program, they could go contact their colleagues at Boston Children's Hospital or one of the partners hospitals and kind of learn, okay, how do I get this done? So we've been convening that group, and in April and May, we had virtual meetings that allowed us to kind of just take the pulse of everybody on what they kind of felt would happen this summer, but then also just keep them up to date and in terms of our ability to match students with them. Many of our students were scheduled to do in-person interviews in late March and early April. We transitioned that over to phone and video. One of the things that we found was that was a great way to engage students through this as they were kind of going into an environment of online schooling. We're able to kind of keep them focused a little bit on the career readiness aspect of the development and especially thinking about the summer. So, and they learned how to use Zoom and Google Classroom, and we realized employers realized students can do this. Our attendance rate was pretty strong for phone interviews. So it was a great experience overall. Our career specialists created a do's and don'ts guide for students to follow when they're on phone calls so that they know, try to find a quiet place in your house, and just different kind of protocols, so that we can make sure that they were successful for both sides. And then the employer networks allowed us to kind of address, develop these virtual models, which I'll show you a little bit more about on the next slide, Mike. So there's kind of two emerging models that have developed. And the first one is pretty simple. It's just, it's a virtual work-based internship. So a lot of our employers in the private sector, students are working at, different departments in HR, marketing, of kind of major financial companies, or at hospitals, life science companies. So a lot of that work can transition to some extent to a virtual space. So some of the companies are just going to kind of move the internship to virtual. Students will do work for a department under a supervisor. And then I think what will happen is, since companies may not have 25 to 30 hours a week, we'll provide some sort of wraparound professional development and online trainings to round out the experience that gets students closer to that 20 to 25 hour a week range of hours. And then the next model is more of a professional development, academic enrichment model. So in this case, students will primarily be doing online training and courses, work on independent group projects that may be related to the company, or maybe kind of more of a professional development type education project. And then there's the potential that we could also include some dual enrollment classes as well, so students can learn some credits. We're kind of developing that as we go here with college partners. So let me go to the next slide. So what I thought I would do is just show you a little bit of a model of what our healthcare providers are doing. So our hospital partners are one of, typically would have about 500 high school students on site over the summer. And this summer, obviously with the pandemic, it's not going to be on-site work, it's going to move to remote. And since a lot of those jobs don't easily translate into remote experiences, they're becoming a little bit more like education-based programs. And there's kind of like 5 components that they could select several of or implement all of to kind of round out the student's experience. But one is academic learning and training. So they're collaborating with higher ed partners on courses, or kind of encouraging students to take courses on LinkedIn Learning, Microsoft Office training. We then, we want to have some, engaged students and kind of thinking about their career. So we're organizing career panels that will be virtual, potentially college tours as well. If the conditions improve in August, there's the potential that we can have some, in-person activities, though. Less hopeful that's going to happen this summer, but there is a chance. And then in addition to that, we're organizing workshops as well, so that students can build skills, their resumes, kind of do skill and interest assessments to kind of think about what they want to do for college or for their career. And those will be guided by either PIC staff or other CBO partner staff as well. And we have a curriculum that we use from Commonwealth Corporation, Massachusetts, called Signal Success that we will employ over the summer. And then group check-in. So our program staff are going to be calling students, doing Zoom calls and other calls just to engage them. We think social interaction is a big part of this, so we want adults mentoring them. Some of our hospital partners are going to have their college interns mentor the high school interns so that they are staying in touch as well. And then next slide. And then, a core piece of all of the experience we hope in every program is to have project-based work. And some of our companies, as I said, will have department level projects, so the students will be doing work for the company. But we also are putting forth ideas for students just to engage in other projects that, from a public health standpoint or social justice standpoint, that can help them, develop skills over the summer, and also, interact with adults and kind of gain different experiences. So one of the things we've told hospitals that they could consider are kind of the ideas that we laid out here that we borrowed from our partners. But one is to repurpose a public health campaign for a millennial or Gen Z audience using social media. Another is to evaluate existing health policy and make recommendations for COVID, how it would change now that there's COVID. So the idea is that students can go interview family members. If it's safe, they could do interviews out in the community to kind of help them address or try different messaging and things like that. And then all these would be guided by adults to kind of help students think through the projects and culminate in a formal presentation at some level at the end of experience. So project-based learning is a big thing we're trying to do now with our partners. Just think about good projects, have good frameworks, weekly deliverables and assignments, and be able to track how students are doing over the 6-week experience. And last slide, Mike. Last two, sorry. A lot of these ideas are for the hospital partners, but one of the things we're trying to do in the collaboration space is get our hospital partners to align to a certain schedule so that we can share resources across hospitals. So one is on these career panels. If they all adopt a similar schedule for youth over the summer, then we can have a youth panel available to students working at all different types of sites. So on the next slide, Mike, I'll show quickly that one of the things that we've kind of helped them do, and this will probably change a lot over the experience, but if every hospital kind of works on a similar schedule, then we'd be able to kind of plug in those blue boxes from 10 to 12 o'clock on a Tuesday or Thursday, a career panel activity or something that's available to all students. On a similar note, the class or training, they may share a dual enrollment course or an online training across all partners. So the scheduling is a big piece we're trying to bring to kind of coordinate the activities as well. So with that, I'll stop there and I'll turn it over to Luki in Albany. So we're going down Mass Pike West about 3 hours, I think, and from Boston to Albany. Go ahead, Luki.
How are you doing? My name is Luki Forbes, and I am the Summer Youth Employment Administrative Assistant for the City of Albany. I also work as the office manager for the Youth Opportunity Office, and I also assist with youth engagement within the OSEA program. So I just wanted to basically thank everyone for joining us on this webinar and actually taking the time out just to learn and speak on the different things that we can do to basically help the youth through the Summer Youth Employment Program. So basically with our organization, we've been paying attention to how COVID has been affecting everything and everyone. And when I say that, I'm also referring to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. As we view those, we see that the statistics show that unemployment rates for ages of 16 to 19-year-olds have jumped from 14.3% to 31.9% within March and April, literally a month apart. And when we're paying attention to things like that, we're not only trying to gear our summer youth program to help employ these youth right now for the summertime, we're also trying to help them develop the skills so that they could again move forward into their career paths that they choose. So we're trying to also identify what COVID is doing to the future of jobs and really coming up with a plan so that we can engage our youth with the Summer Youth Employment Program and make sure that they're actually work ready once they actually leave our program. So what our program has added to our implications of our implemented into our changings is, one, we're going down to 4 weeks. We're normally a 5-week program, but we're going to cut it down 1 week just to make sure that we can definitely make sure that we have enough funds to pay all of our kids and things like that. And just because COVID has everyone rushing, we want to make sure that we have our program set and tight. Another thing that we're doing is we're actually training coaches on how to utilize Google Classroom and also troubleshoot those problems. And we're also teaching them how to utilize Zoom so that they can either troubleshoot it on Zoom. In necessary cases, we're also going to be sending coaches to people to show them how to utilize their phones or their laptops for Google Classroom and things like that. Also, I shared a bunch of links, which I can share again within the chats, to a bunch of things and tutorials that can teach you really how to utilize Google Classroom to its fullest. Google Classroom is a wonderful program where you're able to engage youth in multiple ways. There's one tutorial that can actually teach you how to make a Bitmoji slide, where you can actually make a slide with Bitmojis, and that's real interactive for kids, especially from 14 to 18. They really use Bitmojis a lot. You can use it just regular slides, or you can make an interactive one. There's even a tutorial that teaches you how to make speaking Bitmoji videos and things like that. You can use it to set up your schedules for your students. So when they click onto the Google Classrooms, they're actually confronted by your Bitmoji and things like that. That's a way to keep youth engaged. We literally just moved them from school online to working online. And we want to make sure that it's kind of new and it's always refreshing for them. Another thing that we're doing now is we're going to be doing a lot more, as everyone's been saying, a lot more job shadowing. So we're making more virtual internships because it's harder for us to really make sure that our students are safe, and as well as our workers and our partners, making sure that everyone is safe. We're just going to try to make sure that we keep everything virtual and make sure that we're training our youth again in the skills that we see are being utilized now more and will probably be utilized more in the future. We also have a COVID tracing training that we'll be doing for kids that are 18 and older. That's really helpful to them because they can actually get a job as COVID tracers once they receive their certificates. We're also doing a lot of metrics training for our youth, who can also receive a lot of valuable skills and soft skills there, and as well as certificates in those classes. And a few of the enrichments that we're incorporating is actually more coding and actually teaching kids how to utilize database softwares. So again, so that we can start identifying the jobs that people will be looking for and the things that people will be looking for more in the future. We looked at LinkedIn's they did a report on future jobs, so did Monster, and as well as Indeed's. A lot of jobs that all these people have depicted actually feeling hurt are the ones that we were gearing kids towards, such as like camp counselors and things like that. They really have been affected by COVID and just really social distancing. A lot of engagement has been affected by social distancing. So again, we're moving more towards Zoom and Google Classrooms. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Lori from Los Angeles Opportunity Collaborative and Alliance for Children's Rights. Hello?
You're muted, Lori.
Oh, okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Hi, my name is Lori Collier from Los Angeles, California, and thank you so much for having me here today. I wanted to talk a little bit about what Los Angeles is doing with summer youth employment. But first I wanted to start with explaining that the Los Angeles Opportunity Youth Collaborative is a collaborative with over 70 partners who are working together to build multi-sector partnerships to improve the education and employment outcomes of transition age foster youth so they can achieve their dreams. And the LA County Summer Youth Employment Program is actually a year-round program called Youth at Work. It serves about 20,000 youth across our 7 workforce development boards with an $18 million investment from the County of Los Angeles, matched with an $18 million investment with the city of Los Angeles. Youth who participate in the summer program are often from foster care, juvenile justice, or live in low-income or CalWORKs households. And the summer program is most often their only opportunity to gain work experience and earn wages. And with the pandemic hitting in March, we learned that about 30% of young adults between the ages of 20 and 24 in California have filed for unemployment. So in March, as we were in our safer at home order, we started to pivot our work to start to understand the immediate needs of what our young adults were facing. And the biggest one that emerged to the surface was that information that was being made available around public benefits was not being written towards a young adult audience. And we took the time to start sitting down and thinking about how to write youth voice fact sheets to make sure our young adults knew that they could access public benefits like unemployment and stimulus checks as the rules had changed. And we wanted to make sure that we educated young people on how to go through the myriad of steps to access those resources. And then as we were doing that, we started to move to some short-term organizing around what would summer youth employment look like this year and what were the resources that would be needed to make sure youth could have that experience. One of the big ones that surfaced was access to technology, in addition to access just to food and basic needs. So we, at the same time all this is happening, we're thinking about how do we move our work readiness curriculum to an online experience. The 7 workforce boards here have one curriculum that they've been using that we developed in partnership with them. And we moved everything to Zoom and Google Classroom and started providing a lot of technical assistance to the 60+ access points to teach them how to use Zoom and Google Classroom and to work with students to understand how to use those platforms. And interestingly, we just did a survey with the workforce centers, and we found that they have seen an increase or maintained level enrollments inside of their programs, which was surprising because we thought young people maybe wouldn't participate in programming, and we've actually seen that that wasn't the case at all, which has been some great news. And so from there, over the last month, we have been working in partnership with our city and county partners. In the mayor's office, Mayor Eric Garcetti has already committed $18 million in the city general funds to support as many youth as last year in summer youth employment for youth that live in with the city of Los Angeles. And currently, the collaborative partners are advocating to the County Board of Supervisors for a commitment of $18 million to support level funding going in for this next fiscal year, which starts on July 1st. This time has been very much a time of collaboration. We have come together, nonprofit intermediaries have been invited to conversations with both the city and county on how to adapt our work-based learning opportunities, including work experience for young people, and how we design those programs. We've been in a lot of discussions on virtual platforms that we could use in addition to Google and Zoom, Google Classroom and Zoom, and how do we create programming that's flexible enough to support youth based on their needs. LA is still under the safer at home guidance, and we're slowly starting to reopen currently. And what that is currently looking like for summer, we envision a program where youth could go to 80 hours to 100 hours of service, but really thinking about it in terms of like aging by age. So for youth 14 to 17, we're thinking that could be working at home with a facilitated class via Google and Zoom with some project-based learning work experience. For youth 16 to 18 without a high school diploma, we've been in a conversation with LAUSD, our largest school district, about how to do credit recovery paired with facilitated work readiness training. And then for youth that are 18 to 24 with a high school diploma that were interested, we tried to think about developing both on-site work experience and off-site work experience, depending on a young person's preference about going back out into public. So some of the things we've been talking about is How do we partner with Parks and Rec that will be opening up their summer programs? They're going to need more supervision this year than ever, because as the ratios are coming down as we go back into public, how do we have young people go and work with Parks and Rec to make sure social distancing and safety protocols are being followed? Youth that aren't comfortable going out, how can we connect them to provide outreach and engagement to connect other youth to public institutions and community-based organization resources so they know all of the things that are available to them? And then the third point is, how do we incorporate both educational and work-based learning projects together, with work experience being that a group of young people could come up with community service projects that are in environmental justice or entrepreneurism and technology. And we're currently in the midst of kind of fleshing out what does all this mean in actual practice and application. And there's a good table of us that are coming together on a regular basis to really put down, like, what does this design look like? The other piece I want to highlight is the digital divide here in Los Angeles is very real, and we are experiencing it. Access to technology has been a huge push that has happened. The Opportunity Youth Collaborative partners with an organization called iFoster that's been working on technology access for both current and former foster youth over the last year. And they've been able to have an investment of $22 million from the public and private partners. So we can offer free smartphones with hotspots to all youth in foster care ages 13 to 26. And the pandemic has created a huge surge in demand. iFoster's distributed more than 6,000 mobile phones and more than 3,300 laptops. And there's currently discussions around moving that age down from 13 to 5 to 12, because the mobile phone with the hotspot is what a lot of foster youth and foster care kinship providers and families are using as hotspots, because they may not have access to the internet. In addition, we're mindful that the summer youth employment program is a key investment that supports our workforce systems infrastructure. Another point we've been really advocating across our partners and to our county electeds is that the workforce system is going to have a surge of dislocated workers kind of come back to it. And our community-based organizations that are supported by public dollars, if the funding is cut for summer youth employment, that means a direct reduction in the case management staff at community-based organizations. So we're trying to make sure that funding stays flush. So as we start to go back to work, we want to make sure our youth that have been dislocated from employment can go back to work. The community-based organizations need to have budgets that are intact in order to manage the surge in demand. And I know there's questions at the end. So with that, I'll pass it over to Keisha, who's gonna kind of round us back out.
All right, everyone. So we have lots of questions. And I'm sad to say that we will not get to not even a fraction of them. But the good news is that both Aspen and CLASP and our networks and JPMorgan Case are committed to compiling the themes and the questions and to getting a recording and the slides out to all of you. So there were specific questions for some of the presenters, so we're going to save those, send them to you directly, and do that in the follow-up. So I figured, Mike, what we will do is just, I would call out some of the questions that seem applicable to everyone, if that makes sense. So we have some categories around funding, around virtual learning, and equity, and food, and then, of course, our friend, WIOA. So really quickly, some of you talked about some of your funding, as in Los Angeles, a large commitment from the mayor. But if everyone could do a very quick round robin of where does your funding come from for your summer youth employment programs? And Farah, if you can start, because I see you're already unmuted.
Yep. So I would say the majority of our funding comes from city as well as state temporary assistance for needy families. That kind of makes up about 75% of our funding combined. And then the remainder of the funding is a mix of private sector funding, some other national philanthropy. And when I say private sector funding, that's both kind of local foundations, but also employers, and then national philanthropy. But I will call out, we do not use WIOA funds for our summer employment program.
Okay, great. Joe, really quickly, funding for your
Sure.
summer youth employment program.
Sure. So the wage dollars are, the city makes a large investment. We also have a state program called Youth Works that the city receives money from that provides wages for low-income youth. On the staffing side, we have another state line item called Connecting Activities that kind of supports the brokering efforts that the PIC does. And then employer paid wages are a big part of it as well. So there's kind of staffing structure and then large city, local, state, and then in private sector wage commitments.
Great.
And no WIOA for our summer for primarily as well.
Okay, no WIOA. Okay, WIA. Okay, and Shauna, before I go to the next question, because I know Lori, you already shared. You want to share?
We have an investment, a big investment from the City of Detroit's general fund, as well as some block grant dollars. We have, we're blessed to have a very supportive philanthropic community, so we have a lot of private funding. And then we have some employer investment where they cover the wages of the young people that are placed with them.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So I'm going to jump to the next question because I want to get it in before time is up, and it was about equity and your selection process. Is it competitive? Are there community-based referrals? We know many in this network are really concerned and support and work with opportunity youth, older young people. So jump in and share your kind of target and how you think about equity in your summer youth employment program. Shauna, you were just talking. You want to go first? And then we'll go there. Yeah.
Sure. Yes, it's definitely something that we have to think about a lot, access to the program, right? And so we have a few different on-ramps to access the GDYT program. The majority of young people come to us through the partner network. And so they recruit and select and onboard young people. But then that means that young people have to be connected in some way. And so we have to reserve space and create intentionally ways for young people who aren't connected to have an on-ramp. And so we get 14 to 15,000 applications in our online platform. And some of those young people we pick just through lottery so that they can have an opportunity as well.
Thank you. Anyone else want to jump in? And I don't think you can keep it, you too.
So our program actually just through a recent procurement expanded. So we actually did a whole procurement process last year to revamp the system, and then we had to take it down and build it up again very quickly. And we expanded up to 24 to allow for opportunities to be connected to summer employment. Traditionally, our system was focused on more of the in-school population. So we did make a shift. Our selection process is largely due to our providers. So our provider organizations are responsible for doing the recruitment and enrollment of participants. We do have 16,000 applicants for about 8,000 jobs every year. So it is very competitive. And really it is that connection to the provider organization that will get you connected to a program. PYN has more recently, because we've seen the access of that provider connection being lower for those populations that are often the most disconnected, we have taken more of a stance on getting young people in the juvenile justice, the dependent care from certain zip codes or certain schools that our data has shown are traditionally not getting connected to providers. We have now taken a stance of getting them enrolled and connected and then making referrals to our providers that have not met their SLAT levels. And so that's an intervention that we have added to try and get those numbers up from populations that are traditionally underserved.
In the city of Albany, what we're doing is we're basically going to take in all of our TANF students, just how she said, from our provider, since that's basically our lead provider right now, and it just makes it easier for database and for it to not really be that much of a competition. we're just going to take in all the 10 of students into our program this year.
Thank you, Luki. That was the other
I would
question.
just add,
How is it prioritized for those with the lowest income? So, Joe?
I would just add that we try to hire and we try to recruit and hire staff that come from the communities we serve, both in kind of on the high school side and then also OI as well. And we do aggressive outreach to kind of target students that we know are underserving and older youth that we're underserving in that. So it's access is a big piece of it as well. We have competitive internships, but we have sponsored opportunities where we could place students to kind of build their skills and hopefully transition them to the private sector. But certainly, we try to do outreach to everybody that we're underserving and bring them in.
Thank you. So and the next question is really about virtual learning. There were a lot of questions about virtual learning, and I know Aspen and Mike and Monique will be following up with some tools for the field. But Lori, if you mind kicking this off, is kind of what kind of training have you been thinking about for both the staff and the young people? And we know that through the school district, shifts, there were lots of challenges. And also, you mentioned how you all are providing access to technology and hardware. But for those other folks, are you helping to support internet costs and technology costs to be a part of the online experience?
Sure. So we have been supporting most of the sites in how to run Google Classroom and Zoom, and we actually converted all of the curriculum over for them, so they had access to all the PowerPoints that were created. And then we've been a staff person actually then goes to the classes and co-teaches or co-facilitates inside of Zoom with the person at the center to build the capacity, because as we see it, we're probably going to be home for the rest of this year. So making sure that staff at the workforce sites know how to facilitate online has been a key. There's a full-time person on that. The youth it's easy to do with Zoom because there's just a link to it. So we found that's been the easiest platform for youth to engage in. It's also something you can see everybody on versus on Teams. You can't see everyone. And with youth engagement, you really need to see all the young people. Your next question talks about access to technology. We have been fortunate enough here in LA, a lot of the internet companies are offering free or reduced cost internet. So now what we're doing is following up on that, because there's been some challenges with then the bills going back to the regular price. So we're having to do some advocacy to make sure that that does not stop, because that's going to put a burden on families. And then also trying to figure out with the school districts that have put out all these loaner equipment that are now saying they're going to collect it all just to reissue it in the new school year. It's like, okay, so how do we get in this conversation now? Because that doesn't make a ton of sense. And try to figure out with all of the collective partners what to do has been a challenge. We have 80 school districts here in LA. The largest one being our County Office of Education. So it's trying to make sure that everybody is working together versus in silos. So if somebody's doing something well in one district, we can replicate that to the other. It has been a lot of conversations and a lot of work.
Yes, thank you, Lori. We have about, let's see, 4 minutes. So I want some of the other speakers to kind of get on your virtual learning capacity and training and supporting young people and their families with technology access.
So like I said before, with Google Classroom, there's multiple trainings and tutorials that you can find on YouTube that actually can help you utilize the Google Slides to make Bitmoji characters, and they're able to move, talk, and also you're able to direct them towards different studies. You can build their schedules and things like that. And it just makes it a lot more fun and interactive for the children. So if you're able to jazz your work sites up, your work site Google Classrooms up with those Bitmojis and different slides, it'll really make it more interactive for the children.
Thank you. Shauna, I see you're prepared to say a few words about your virtual learning capacity, training young people, technical assistance to providers.
Yes, I was just going to add, so I signed. Yes, I assigned basically a staff person to research and pull together a training that we'll do for our partners on best practices, keeping young people engaged, as well as keeping them safe in their online practices. And so we've been thinking about that as well. And then as far as the technology piece, we're really relying on our partnership with the school district for their distribution to every Detroit public school student. Over 50,000 kids the district has committed to getting them a device. And so that takes a big lift off of us, and we'll focus on the gaps. So kids out of school, opportunity youth, and kids that may be in charters or other districts.
Okay, thank you.
And that includes internet access.
Thanks. Farah or Joe, I can go to the next question if you want to add anything.
I can jump in real quick. We have a team called our Professional Learning and Development team, who a lot of them are former educators themselves, and they've kind of come over into our sector. And so that team was fully deployed and dedicated to, one, building up our curriculums, but then also developing out the trainings for our provider network. So we are doing specific trainings on our platforms, and then similar to Shauna, it's really at the provider level that are navigating the young people through the experiences. So our role has been, one, to develop out our curriculums in safe and usable ways that we feel would be youth friendly, but then also how are we training the trainers more or less and giving them the resources. And so that is currently happening right now, and that's what we'll continue to be offering the supports for both our providers and our young people.
Thank you.
And I would just add, we've been we've been engaging students in work readiness workshops, and then also helping prepare them for phone and video interviews. So in that, we've been kind of getting them up to speed on all the business technology out there.
Good, thank you. So we have so many questions, and unfortunately, we won't be able to get to just even a fraction of them, but I'll just give you some categories. It was around about your milestones and incentives. A number of you mentioned that. Wages versus stipends. There were questions around equity, which we addressed some of that, but also we know that summer youth employment and summer programs also provide young people with supportive services. So there was a question about food. How are we helping young people to and their families to get food access, food and nutrition access? And so those were some of the questions, and there were some very specific questions about number of the resources and platforms and technologies that you all are using to make this possible. And so we'll be following up, and I know Monique is going to take it over to give us a call to action and some next steps. But just want to thank everyone for your time, for your engagement, and for your commitment to our young people. Monique.
Thank you, Keisha. Can you all hear me okay? Great.
Yes.
So we wanted to close out beginning with an acknowledgement to all of our presenters today, but also, as importantly, all of the participants on this call. Mike, if you could go ahead and start my video, that would be great, because it's not allowing me to start it from my end. But what we want to close with is just acknowledging all of the incredible work that so many communities are doing right now on behalf of young people. And while we recognize that we were not able to feature all of the great work, one of the things we're deeply committed to and looking forward to doing is continuing to document and share all of these stories. We know that it's so important that in real time we lift up the great work that's happening so that communities are supported to work through challenges together across peers and across communities to support young people. So we don't have enough time to lift up all of the themes, but a few that are just at least worth noting here are, first and foremost, the importance of a system leader and the role of a system leader in being able to bring this type of programming together. So we heard different communities talk about the coordination and alignment that's necessary to bring systems, employers, youth, and funders together, including service providers. Another key theme we heard was adaptability. So whether it's technology, for communications, to safety, to converting, from wages to incentives. We have heard a great different range and variety of ways that communities right now are adapting in real time. We also heard a great deal about culturally responsive programming. Specifically, we heard in Detroit, thinking about trauma and healing and grief, and socio-emotional learning practices. We also heard about designing for special needs. We recognize how important this is right now in real time. And then finally, we heard themes around innovations, everything from thinking about rethinking specific sectors like healthcare to storytelling projects and repurposing public health campaigns. We recognize how important it is to be able to do this work in real time. So we want to close with a call to action, and what we really hope you all can continue to think about, particularly if you're a practitioner. We hope you found today's content useful. We will email out the link to the recording of this webinar. And as Keisha mentioned, next week, the Aspen Forum for Community Solutions will release a 1.0 Digital Summer Youth Employment Toolkit based on a rapid scan of the adaptations, just like the ones that were discussed here today. They are designed to provide further resources to support how you will adapt your programs in real time. We look forward to sharing this tool with all of you and then working together in the weeks and months ahead to adapt the tool to ensure its relevancy, not only throughout the summer, but into the fall as communities consider virtual learning strategies at the secondary and post-secondary levels. And for policymakers, you heard it here today that public investments are critical lifelines to these programs. We need your help to maintain current investments and to also ensure that future funding will be available to support these critical programs and approaches communities are using to teach young adults employability skills. Thank you for being fierce advocates for our country's young people. If you are in philanthropy, we ask that you also continue to invest in this critical work. Private dollars are key in supporting the adaptations and innovations that were shared today, and they help to fund new ideas, new approaches, and new ways of working. A key takeaway from today is that communities need new partnerships and a great deal of equipment to make these summer programs work. Yes, they are resilient, and their ability to adapt and sustain is also contingent on your support. So thank you to all of our funder partners for making summer youth employment and our country's young adults a priority. Last but not least, if you are a young leader, this issue is of key importance to you, and we recognize that and stand in partnership with you as we all continue to push to make these programs happen. We know that programming must be relevant and high quality, and we need to continue to expand what this looks like. There are many stories of how young people are organizing in communities across the country. We encourage you to continue to tell and share these stories about how young people are on the front lines of advocating for this important programming. We want to close by saying thank you to everyone again for joining us today. We look forward to sharing out the video from today, sending a follow-up to the questions that got raised, particularly ones that we were not able to answer. And finally, we want to make sure that we stay in touch in the weeks and months ahead to share all of the resources that were lifted up here today. On behalf of our partners at CLASP, at JPMorgan Chase, and at the Aspen Institute, we hope that everyone has a healthy and safe summer. Thank you all.